The reading happened at a kitchen table with a loose leg. Somebody had put a folded paper towel under it, but every time Diane shifted in her seat, the whole table rocked and the glasses trembled. Nobody fixed it. Nobody said anything about it. Roy Teal had been dead 11 days. The notary, family friend named Gerald, who did taxes and notarizations out of a shared office on Clement Street, read the will in the same flat voice he probably used for everything. The rental property on Ashford went to Diane. The commercial lot on Route 9 got split between Deshawn and his sister Kezia. Liquid assets divided among the remaining siblings. Then Gerald said Marcus's name. 62 acres, unincorporated land, located 40 minutes outside the city past the grain co-op and the volunteer fire station, and a stretch of road where the shoulder disappears entirely. Gerald moved on, Marcus didn't. He was sitting in a folding chair slightly behind the table because there weren't enough seats, and he watched Deshawn's shoulder drop the way shoulders drop when something goes better than expected. Diane set her hands flat on the table. A TV in the back room was going, a cable news channel nobody was watching. Well, Diane said, Roy always had his reasons. Marcus had the paper copy of the will in his hand. He folded it in thirds the way you fold a bill you're about to put in your wallet, and he put it in the interior pocket of his jacket. Gerald was already gathering his folders. Someone in the kitchen started running water. Deshawn stopped next to Marcus on the way out. He said what he thought. You know anything about land management? Marcus said no. Yeah, Deshawn nodded like that confirmed something. All right. He patted Marcus twice on the shoulder firm, the way you acknowledge someone at a loss, and walked out to the driveway where the other cousins were standing by their cars, already in a different conversation. Marcus stood in Roy's kitchen for another few minutes. A coffee mug Roy bought from a gas station somewhere in Mississippi that said world's okayest fisherman was in the dish rack, clean. Someone had washed it. He drove out to the land the same evening, still in his funeral clothes, stood at the rusted gate for about 10 minutes. Brush and scrub pine and red clay visible from the road, a possum crossing somewhere in the tree line. He didn't say anything. He took a picture of the gate with his phone. Then he drove home. The property tax bill came in January, $412. Marcus paid it online at 11:40 at night, sitting at his kitchen table in a t-shirt. The confirmation email arrived in 12 seconds. He screenshot it, dropped it in a folder on his phone he'd labeled Acre, and went to bed. That was year one. The cookout was at Diane's in July, the second summer. Somebody had a Bluetooth speaker going near the garage. The kids were in the backyard. Marcus was at the fold-out table near the cooler, fixing his plate, when Deshawn came up with a red cup, and that particular kind of ease that means someone's been comfortable for a while. So what you doing with that land? Marcus put potato salad on his plate, still looking into it. Looking into what, though? Not hostile. Genuinely curious, the way people are curious about something they've already decided doesn't matter. Land use, what it's zoned for, what the county's doing out that way. Deshawn nodded slowly. Man, he took a sip. That's 60 acres of mosquitoes and bad decisions. Somebody nearby laughed. Marcus didn't see who. He picked up a fork, moved to the end of the table, found a seat next to his cousin Renee's husband who was watching something on his phone with the sound low. They didn't talk. It was fine. The attorney's name was Patricia Osei. She worked out of a 2-room office above a cell phone repair shop on Western Avenue. Marcus found her through a referral from a man in his building who'd done a land partition years back. Their first meeting was 45 minutes. She asked flat questions and wrote his answers in a legal pad without reacting to any of them. At the end, she said the parcel's position relative to the county's long-range infrastructure corridor was worth watching, not promising. Worth watching? Marcus asked what that meant practically. She said it meant he should keep paying his taxes, get a current survey done, and call her if anything moved. Nothing moved for almost 2 years. He got the survey done in October. The boundary markers on the eastern edge had shifted and were corrected in the filing. He put the report in his closet next to his lease and his car title. The third tax bill arrived in January. He paid it the same night, same way, phone on the table, confirmation in 12 seconds, but this time he didn't put it away immediately. He sat there and added it up 3 years of taxes, the survey, Patricia's hours. A number that was starting to mean something, attached to land that still wasn't. He could sell it. The thought wasn't new, but that night it'd wait. 62 acres of brush and red clay with a rusted gate and no road in. Someone would take it, not for much, but for something. He could be done with it before the fourth bill came. He looked at the folder on his phone labeled Acre. Then he closed the app and went to bed. In November, Kezia posted photos of the Route 9 property's new tenant. The comments called it a smart investment. Roy would be proud. Marcus liked the post, then opened the county land use portal and read a 47-page infrastructure study until midnight. The state sent a letter in March, not an offer. A notice of interest, formal language for we need to talk. It came in a standard envelope with a return address from the Department of Transportation's Right-of-Way Acquisition Office. Marcus read it standing at his mailbox in the parking lot. Light rain coming down. Somebody's car idling 2 spots over waiting for a space. He read it twice, put it in his jacket, went inside. He called Patricia before he took his coat off. She picked up on the third ring. He read her the reference number. She was quiet for a moment. He could hear her typing, and then she said, "Okay. Don't respond to this directly. Forward it to me tonight, and don't talk to anyone at that office until we've spoken." He asked how long that would take. She said, "Call me tomorrow at noon." He didn't tell anyone. He went to work the next morning, sat through a staff meeting about quarterly projections, ate lunch at his desk. Noon came. He took the elevator to the parking garage and called Patricia from his car with the engine off. She'd pulled the corridor maps from the DOT's public filing. The proposed highway extension crossed unincorporated county land, which meant it crossed his parcel. Approximately 31 of his 62 acres sat inside the proposed right-of-way boundary. Marcus watched a coworker cross the garage toward the elevator, badge swinging. Patricia said the acquisition process typically ran 6 to 18 months. The state would make an offer based on appraised value. He had the right to negotiate or contest it. She said the words eminent domain once, explained what they meant practically, and moved on. He asked what the land was worth. She said she'd have a number for him by end of week. Diane called on a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks later. Marcus was heating up food when his phone lit up on the counter. He turned the burner down and answered. She asked about his job, asked about his knee. Then she talked for a while about nothing in particular, the comfortable filler of someone building towards something. Then I heard something about that land, about the highway expansion. Marcus opened the cabinet for a plate. "I've heard some things. You know your grandfather always wanted the family together on decisions like this." Outside the kitchen window, a truck downshifted on the street below. Marcus set his plate on the counter. "I'll think about it," he said. "Of course, no rush." A pause. "You doing okay otherwise?" "Yeah," he said, "I'm good." After he hung up, he found Patricia's number and typed a single text. She called. Patricia responded 11 minutes later with 3 words. "Expected, stay quiet." Marcus ate his food. Outside, a truck turned somewhere and the street settled back into ordinary noise, wind, somebody's music fading as they drove past. He washed his plate, went to bed. Marcus booked the private room at a place called Harlan's, mid-range, good parking, the kind of restaurant families use for birthdays and retirement send-offs. He sent the calendar invite on a Monday, 8 people confirmed. He made the reservation for 9, ordered the fixed menu, and paid the deposit with his card. The recorder fit in his inside jacket pocket. He tested it twice in his apartment before he left. It picked up clearly from 6 feet. Everyone arrived within the same 15 minutes, which meant the room filled with the specific noise of people who know each other well enough not to need small talk, but are performing it anyway. Coats over chairs, someone commenting on the bread. Deshawn asking about parking validation. Diane had brought a folder. It sat near her plate through the appetizers, which nobody acknowledged directly. Marcus asked Kezia about her daughter's school situation. The food came out in rounds, and the table settled into something that almost resembled a regular dinner. Then Diane opened the folder. A trust document, 8 pages already tabbed. She walked through it in the measured voice of someone who had rehearsed, without wanting to seem like they'd rehearsed. The structure, the tax positioning, the equal distribution framework. She used the word legacy twice. Deshawn picked it up from there. Numbers, percentages, what the acquisition payout could look like split across the family versus absorbed by one person. He said Roy built this for all of us, in a tone that wasn't quite a statement and wasn't quite a question. Marcus nodded. He asked what the timeline looked like on the trust formation. Deshawn said it could move fast if everyone was aligned. Renee set her fork down. The land was never really about you, Marcus. I don't mean that wrong. Roy just didn't want it leaving the family. You know that, right? The table went slightly still the way tables do, when someone has said a true thing in the wrong direction. Diane said, what Renee means. No, it's fine, Marcus said. He meant it in a way nobody at the table read correctly. I hear you. He took the document, turned the pages slowly, reading or appearing to read. Asked 2 questions about the trustee structure, both reasonable, both things Patricia had told him to ask if he wanted them talking for another 20 minutes. They talked for another 20 minutes. By dessert, Deshawn had said the land had been wasted, until now, and the trust was the only way to make it right. Renee had said Marcus getting the parcel was probably Roy not thinking it through. Diane had said nothing that bad, but had nodded. At the right moments, Marcus asked the server for the check. He signed the receipt. He did not sign the document. At the door, Diane hugged him and said this was good, that Roy would have wanted this. Marcus said he'd have Patricia look at the paperwork. He drove home with the recorder still in his pocket. At his kitchen table, he played back 40 minutes of dinner noise and voices, then stopped it at the part where Renee said what she said and sat with that for a moment. Then he called Patricia. She answered on the second ring. How'd it go? They talked, Marcus said. A brief pause, all of it on there. All of it. Okay, she said. I'll call the acquisition office in the morning. The wire cleared at 11:47 a.m. Marcus was at his desk at work when Patricia texted. He read it, set his phone face down, and finished the email he was writing. Then he went to the bathroom, ran cold water over his hands, and looked at himself in the mirror for a few seconds without doing anything particular with his face. He went back to his desk. He had a 1 o'clock. He'd been packing in increments for 3 weeks, the kind of slow dismantling that looks like general tidying if anyone came by. Nobody came by. He left the keys in the super's mailbox on a Sunday morning before the building was fully awake and drove the truck himself. He didn't call anyone before he left. Diane's attorney sent a letter 6 weeks later to Marcus's old address. It was forwarded once, then returned. Patricia received a copy through proper channels: a probate challenge, undue influence, improper disposition of family estate assets. Patricia filed the recording as part of her initial response. 42 minutes of ambient restaurant noise, bread plates, the particular echo of a private dining room, and 8 people talking across a table. The relevant portions were time-stamped and transcribed. Renee saying the land was never really about Marcus. Deshawn saying it had been wasted until now. The trust framing, the payout math, the word correct used twice in reference to Roy's decision. The challenge dissolved before it reached a hearing date. Marcus got the notification from Patricia by email. Subject line: FYI, they withdrew. 2 sentences. He read it on his phone in the parking lot of a grocery store in his new city, afternoon sun coming through the windshield at a low angle. He replied, thanks, locked his phone, and went inside to get what he needed for dinner. The zoning overlay on the Route 9 commercial lot became official in the spring. Deshawn found out during a refinancing appraisal. The appraiser flagged it in the report without commentary. Just another line among dozens, the kind people skim past until they reach the number at the bottom. The number came back almost 40% lower than what he'd been carrying in his head for years. He called Kezia. Kezia called Diane. Diane sat with it. None of them called Marcus. By then, Marcus had been in the new city almost a year. The acquisition payout had done exactly what money is supposed to do when it arrives honestly and all at once. It made certain worries disappear. The mortgage on the condo was gone. The emergency fund was no longer an emergency fund. For the first time in his adult life, he wasn't calculating the cost of groceries before walking into a store. He still bought the same coffee, still drove the same car, still answered emails the same way. Most days felt surprisingly normal. His apartment faced west, good light in the evenings. Roy's gas station coffee mug sat in the cabinet above the coffee maker, the one that said world's okayest fisherman. And most mornings he used it without thinking about it, and some mornings he did think about it and drank his coffee anyway. One Saturday evening Marcus reached for it and noticed something folded behind it. The will. The copy he'd taken from Roy's kitchen all those years ago. He sat down and unfolded it. The paper had softened along the creases. Ashford Route 9. The acreage, the same names, the same decisions, the same argument everyone had spent years trying to reverse. He looked at the parcel number beside the land and remembered something. Not the funeral, not the reading. A summer afternoon years earlier. Marcus had driven Roy out to the property after a doctor's appointment, one of the long, quiet ones Roy never wanted to talk about after. They'd parked at the rusted gate and stood looking out across the brush, heat shimmering above the dirt road, cicadas somewhere in the trees. Roy had both hands resting on the top rail. He stood there a while without saying anything. Then, funny thing about land. Marcus had asked what he meant. Roy never looked at him, just kept staring out at the tree line. Most people only want it after somebody else figures out why it matters. Then he'd change the subject. Marcus looked down at the will. And suddenly the whole thing felt different. Diane wanted certainty. She got Ashford's stable rent, a known quantity, something she could plan around. Deshawn wanted something people could point at from the road. He got Route 9, visible, respectable, the kind of asset that looked like success before you checked the numbers. The others received exactly the kinds of assets they understood how to value. And Marcus got 62 acres nobody wanted. Not because Roy loved him more, not because Roy thought he was smarter. Because Marcus was the only one who could leave it alone. The only one who could pay the taxes year after year without demanding a reward. Roy hadn't guessed right about the land. He'd guessed right about people. Marcus folded the will along the old crease lines and returned it behind the mug. Then he poured himself another cup of coffee and stood by the window as the last light slipped across the buildings outside. Somewhere along the way, everybody had assumed Roy made a mistake. Turns out he was the only one at that table who knew exactly what he was doing.